Is it worth it to contract for teletherapy services? Hi, my name is Courtney, and I'm the CEO and founder of Lighthouse Therapy. And in this video, we're going to try to tackle this question about teletherapy services. Obviously, I am CEO of a teletherapy company, so I'm biased. That's the reality of it. I think that there are definite positives for it, but I want to try to balance that equation for you and look at both sides of this coin. So when you need therapy services, obviously, if you're even considering teletherapy services, it's because you have a vacancy. You have a vacancy that you probably cannot fill, or you've been trying to fill for a while and you haven't been able to. That tends to be what we see. Or the other option might be that you live in a very remote section of the country and you just don't need a full-time therapist, or you just can't find any therapists because there just aren't any therapists in your area. And it doesn't matter if it's speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, BCBA, counselors, school psychs, social workers. Any of those services can be provided via teletherapy. So why consider it? For one thing, let's talk about parents. You as a special educator and as a director or a lead person in the administration of your school have the parents that come to you and are concerned about their children, and face-to-face services are great because you do have a person there. You have somebody that specifically they can talk to. I understand that. That is the positive of having face-to-face services. But let's say you don't have face-to-face services, you can't find anybody, and now you have upset parents. So by contracting with a teletherapy provider, you can give the parents somebody that they can connect with, and you can provide those services. So hopefully that will help your parents to be happy. Even though it's not face-to-face services, they are getting the services, and there is somebody that you can refer them to that they can talk to about those services. What about compliance? Compliance is another thing to consider when you're face-to-face versus teletherapy. So obviously compliance is good if you have a full staff, but if you don't, what do you do when you have minutes that need to be provided on those IEPs and those minutes aren't getting covered because you just don't have anybody? That is a concern. You definitely want to make sure that you have those minutes covered. We at Lighthouse have done compensatory services. We've had schools come to us that have had no services for a whole semester. And we do compensatory services along with direct services to try to get schools back in compliance. So that's something to consider. And honestly, you don't want your students to go without therapy. There's lots of studies out there that have proven that teletherapy works. And, after the pandemic, some of you had a positive and some of you had a negative experience. I've been doing teletherapy since 2011 and have had tremendous success. We've had tremendous success with students doing therapy. And they get therapy, and they get good therapy. That's really important, is that they get good therapy with therapists that care. And that's important. How about test scores and students learning? We want to make sure that your students get the services they need so that you can have students that are progressing on their IEP goals, progressing in school. Obviously, IDEA is about access to education. We want those students to have that positive education. And by providing the therapy services, whether it's face-to-face or teletherapy, you're still going to hopefully see an improvement in students' test scores and in their ability to learn. And the last thing I want to talk about is the loss of face-to-face services. So you lose a therapist that was doing face-to-face and you haven't been able to replace them with another face-to-face therapist. That is a gap that you have, and you need to get it covered. And even though that person isn't physically in front of your students are digital natives and they understand technology and they embrace it. I think even more than those of us in the 50 plus category as I am. So understanding that you want less of that loss, less of that desire to go without. And your budget, obviously, there's a cost for teletherapy services. It's contract work. But you have to consider, too, when you're looking at your face-to-face costs versus your teletherapy costs, it's not just salary. There's benefits, and there's the cost of hiring and compliance and all of those issues that a teletherapy company will take on. So if you're going to compare, make sure you're comparing apples to apples and not, this is my hourly rate that I'm paying a therapist, and yet I'm paying the teletherapy company a higher rate. Well, it's not just the rate that you were paying for the services. So I hope you found this helpful. As always, if you want to know more on this topic, or if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us, or you can go to our learning center at lighthouse-therapy.com. Thanks and have a blessed day.